You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Application-level vulnerabilities are weaknesses that exist in the design, coding, or configuration of software applications. Unlike infrastructure flaws that exist at the system or network level, these vulnerabilities live inside the logic and functionality of the application itself. They may involve improper input handling, weak session controls, or overly permissive access to resources. Because applications are the interface through which users interact with data and services, weaknesses at this layer directly expose sensitive assets. Attackers know that applications are often the front door to organizations, making application-level vulnerabilities particularly attractive. Defending them requires not just strong infrastructure but also disciplined software design, coding, and maintenance practices. Common classes of application vulnerabilities appear repeatedly across industries. Injection flaws occur when untrusted input is processed without adequate validation, allowing attackers to insert malicious commands into queries. Cross-site scripting (XSS) allows attackers to inject scripts into web pages, executing in the browser of unsuspecting users. Broken authentication involves flaws in login or session management that let attackers impersonate legitimate users. These classes are so prevalent that they form the backbone of most application security standards and testing frameworks. Recognizing these categories helps defenders anticipate the most likely weaknesses and apply mitigations systematically across development and operations. Input validation failures are the root cause of many application vulnerabilities. Applications that fail to verify and sanitize user-supplied data leave themselves open to manipulation. For example, allowing raw input into a database query can enable SQL injection, while accepting unchecked script content may lead to XSS. Proper validation requires ensuring that inputs conform to expected formats, ranges, and types. Without it, applications implicitly trust user data, which attackers exploit to alter logic or inject malicious content. Recognizing input validation as the foundational weakness underscores why so many attacks begin with fields, forms, or parameters that developers overlook. Injection attacks conceptually involve inserting malicious commands or queries into an application's normal processes. SQL injection manipulates database queries, allowing attackers to extract, modify, or delete records. Command injection targets the underlying operating system by appending rogue commands. LDAP injection manipulates directory services to reveal or alter access permissions. The impact is often severe. Attackers may gain administrative control, exfiltrate data, or disrupt operations. Injection attacks are popular because they exploit trust between the application and its back-end systems. They also highlight how one overlooked parameter or query can unravel security across the entire environment. Session management weaknesses create opportunities for attackers to hijack or impersonate user sessions. If session tokens are predictable, insufficiently protected, or not invalidated after logout, attackers can reuse them to gain unauthorized access. Weak cookie handling, such as failing to mark cookies as secure or setting overly long expiration times, compounds the risk. Once an attacker steals or guesses a session token, they inherit the privileges of that user. This can be particularly damaging when the session belongs to an administrator. Strong session management practices, such as token rotation, expiration, and secure transmission, are therefore critical to protecting application users and data. Insecure Direct Object References (IDOR) represent an access control flaw at the application layer. These occur when an application exposes internal identifiers, such as file names or account numbers, without verifying whether the user has permission to access them. An attacker might simply change a URL parameter from user equals 123 inches to user equals 124 inches to view another account. While technically simple, IDOR vulnerabilities can expose sensitive personal or financial data on a massive scale. They illustrate how security failures are not always about complex exploits, but about missing authorization checks. Proper access controls must validate not only who is logged in, but also what they are allowed to access. Authentication and authorization misconfigurations are another common weakness in applications. Authentication failures may include weak password policies, missing account lockout mechanisms, or lack of multi-factor authentication. Authorization flaws involve improper role or privilege assignments, where users can perform actions beyond their intended rights. These errors often stem from developers focusing on functionality first, leaving access control as an afterthought. The result is a system where attackers can escalate privileges or bypass restrictions. Treating authentication and authorization as central design elements rather than add-ons ensures applications enforce boundaries consistently and prevent misuse by unauthorized actors. Insecure deserialization is a less obvious but highly impactful vulnerability. It occurs when applications accept serialized objects' data structures stored for transport or storage and rebuild them without verifying integrity. Attackers can craft malicious objects that, when deserialized, execute unintended commands. In extreme cases, insecure deserialization can lead to remote code execution, granting attackers full control of the system. This vulnerability highlights how hidden processes inside applications, invisible to most users, can become pathways for exploitation. By failing to validate or sanitize deserialized content, applications essentially open their internal logic to manipulation by external actors. Secure coding practices are the strongest defense against introducing vulnerabilities at the application layer. By following guidelines such as validating inputs, encoding outputs, and enforcing principle of least privilege, developers reduce the chance of exploitable flaws. Secure coding is not about memorizing every possible attack, but about applying consistent defensive patterns. Peer code reviews, developer training, and adherence to frameworks like OWASP provide reinforcement. Security built into the development process is far cheaper and more effective than remediation after deployment. Emphasizing secure coding culture ensures vulnerabilities are prevented at the source, rather than patched as emergencies later. Dependencies and third-party libraries introduce significant risks into applications. Modern development relies heavily on open-source components and external frameworks. While these accelerate innovation, they also bring inherited vulnerabilities if not properly vetted and updated. Attackers know that compromising a widely used library can cascade into countless applications. Defenders must therefore track dependencies carefully and update them regularly. Failing to do so leaves applications vulnerable to attacks even if their own code is flawless. The reliance on third-party libraries highlights the interconnected nature of application security, where risk extends beyond what developers directly control. Configuration errors at the application level often expose functionality unintentionally. Default settings may leave debug interfaces active, verbose error messages visible, or administrative panels unprotected. These oversights provide attackers with insight or direct access they should never have. Configuration risks are especially dangerous in cloud environments, where misconfigured storage buckets or APIs can expose massive amounts of sensitive data. Ensuring applications are deployed with hardened configurations is as important as secure coding. Both development and operations teams must collaborate to identify and eliminate insecure defaults that widen the attack surface unnecessarily. Ultimately, application-level vulnerabilities are both a developer and operational concern. Developers introduce weaknesses when coding, but operations teams may worsen them through poor deployment practices or weak maintenance. Security cannot be siloed into one phase of the application lifecycle. Instead, it must be treated as an ongoing responsibility shared across creation, deployment, and maintenance. Application vulnerabilities represent the convergence of human error, design trade-offs, and evolving threats. Recognizing them as shared responsibilities ensures no part of the lifecycle is neglected. This integrated perspective is essential to building and sustaining secure applications in a hostile digital environment. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Input validation strategies provide the first line of defense against application-level attacks. Instead of accepting any data entered by a user, applications must check that inputs conform to expected formats and reject those that do not. Whitelisting is generally preferred over blacklisting. For example, an application that only accepts digits in a phone number field should explicitly allow only numbers, rather than trying to filter out forbidden characters. Whitelisting prevents unexpected data from entering the system and reduces the risk of injection attacks. By consistently applying these validation strategies, developers ensure applications handle data predictably, protecting the logic from malicious manipulation at its most common entry point. Output encoding is another critical safeguard, particularly against cross-site scripting, XSS, and injection-style attacks. Encoding means transforming user-supplied data into a safe format before rendering it in a web page or passing it to a back-end system. For example, encoding HTML special characters prevents browsers from interpreting them as code, ensuring malicious scripts cannot execute. Similarly, encoding database inputs ensures injected commands are treated as text rather than executable instructions. Output encoding works hand-in-hand with input validation, forming a dual barrier. One ensures only clean input enters the system, while the other ensures potentially harmful content cannot be executed if it slips through. Secure session management practices are essential to protecting authenticated users. This includes generating strong, unpredictable session tokens, ensuring they are transmitted only over encrypted channels, and setting them to expire after periods of inactivity. Token rotation adds further security, replacing tokens regularly to reduce their useful lifespan for attackers. Expired sessions should be invalidated immediately to prevent reuse. Without these measures, attackers may hijack sessions and impersonate users, often without detection. Proper session management ensures that authenticated states cannot be exploited indefinitely, forcing attackers to continually overcome renewed barriers rather than exploiting stale or weak session identifiers. Applying the principle of least privilege at the application layer ensures that users and processes only receive the permissions necessary to perform their roles. For example, a user accessing a customer portal should not be able to modify database tables directly. Similarly, back-end services should operate with restricted permissions, limiting the damage if compromised. Least privilege prevents attackers from escalating privileges or accessing sensitive data simply because permissions were too broad. Implementing this principle requires careful role design and thorough access testing. By limiting permissions, defenders shrink the attack surface within the application, turning potential breaches into containable incidents. Dependency scanning and software bill of materials (SBOM) practices provide visibility into third-party risks. Automated scanners can detect outdated or vulnerable libraries, helping teams prioritize updates. An SBOM acts as an inventory, documenting every library, plugin, and module used in an application. This transparency allows organizations to respond quickly when new vulnerabilities are disclosed in widely used components. Without SBOMs, defenders may not even realize they are exposed to a flaw until it is exploited. Managing dependencies is no longer optional in modern development. It is a core part of responsible application security, ensuring inherited risks are visible and addressable. Static and Dynamic Application Security Testing, SAST/DAST, provide complementary methods for identifying vulnerabilities. SAST analyzes source code or binaries to detect insecure coding patterns before applications run. DAST, on the other hand, tests running applications by simulating attacks, revealing flaws in logic and configuration. Each has strengths. SAST catches issues early in development, while DAST validates protections in deployed systems. Used together, they provide broad coverage across the application lifecycle. Security testing should be embedded into regular development cycles, not treated as an afterthought. By applying both SAST and DAST, Organizations proactively discover weaknesses, closing them before attackers can exploit them. Runtime Application Self-Protection (RASP) adds another layer of defense by embedding security monitoring directly into applications. Unlike external tools, RASP operates within the application runtime environment, detecting and blocking malicious behavior in real time. For example, if a SQL injection attempt is made, RASP can intercept the query and neutralize it before reaching the database. This approach reduces reliance on perimeter defenses by giving applications the ability to defend themselves. While not a replacement for secure coding, RASP provides resilience against attacks that slip past other controls. Conceptually, it transforms applications from passive targets into active participants in their own protection. Secure configuration baselines and environment separation strengthen application defenses during deployment. Configuration baselines ensure that applications launch with hardened settings, such as disabling debug modes and restricting administrative panels. Environment separation prevents development or testing systems from being directly accessible in production. This stops attackers from exploiting weaker environments to infiltrate stronger ones. By enforcing clear boundaries, organizations ensure that vulnerabilities in one area do not cascade across the entire ecosystem. Deployment pipelines should automatically enforce these baselines, reducing reliance on manual steps. Structured separation and secure defaults ensure that applications remain consistent, predictable, and resilient against misconfiguration. Timely patching and library updates are essential for remediating vulnerabilities as they are discovered. Developers must monitor for updates not only to their own code but also to the frameworks and libraries their applications rely upon. Delays in patching leave known exploits available to attackers who routinely scan for outdated software. Automated update processes and vulnerability alerts help reduce this lag, ensuring patches are applied quickly and consistently. While patching may introduce operational challenges, the alternative is prolonged exposure to known threats. Timely updates represent one of the most cost-effective and impactful measures for application-level defense. Secure deployment pipelines and thorough code review workflows provide assurance before applications go live. Pipelines that include automated testing, vulnerability scanning, and approval gates catch flaws before they reach production. Code reviews add human oversight, allowing experienced developers to spot logic errors or insecure patterns that tools may miss. By combining automation with peer scrutiny, organizations ensure quality and security are embedded into the release process. Secure deployment pipelines prevent vulnerabilities from becoming embedded in production environments, reducing the need for costly remediation later. This proactive integration of security into workflows is a hallmark of mature development practices. Logging and monitoring are indispensable for detecting application-specific compromises. Applications should generate logs that capture authentication attempts, access to sensitive data, and unusual error patterns. These logs provide early warning signs of attacks such as repeated failed login attempts or unexpected parameter changes. Monitoring tools can analyze this data in real time, flagging anomalies for investigation. Without visibility into application activity, defenders may not realize a breach has occurred until damage is done. Logging and monitoring transform applications into sources of intelligence, enabling rapid detection and response. They are as critical to security as firewalls and encryption. In summary, defending against application-level vulnerabilities requires a combination of secure development practices and operational controls. Input validation, output encoding, and least privilege reduce flaws at the coding level. Dependency management, SAST/DAST, and patching address risks introduced during development and deployment. Runtime defenses like RASP and configuration baselines provide resilience, while logging ensures ongoing visibility. No single control can eliminate vulnerabilities, but layered protections create an environment where exploitation becomes far more difficult. Application security must be proactive, continuous, and collaborative across teams. With discipline and foresight, organizations can significantly reduce risks at this critical layer. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.